Nathan Cox. Thanks for joining us around the home. Okay, today I'm going to show you guys how to do a tile backsplash in your kitchen, okay? I've already got it started. I would have started the video right off the bat, but the dog's here. The situation wasn't working out at all, first of all, in the morning. But I'm going to jump in and I'm going to show you guys tips and tricks on how to do this real nice, okay? I will have, first of all, chapters you'll see in the timeline for the different sections of this video, so you can jump forward, jump back to review. Makes it really easy for you guys. And I'll have Amazon links in the description down below for the different products and tools and stuff we're using in this video. So not only does it help you get the same stuff we're using, but we're Amazon affiliates, so it helps support the channel. So please click away, click. So I might as well just jump in and show you guys the tile I've already got up. All right, so I've got a nice pattern here going. All right, now this is a half offset pattern, first of all. Okay, so you can see each row is 50% off from the next one. So every second row, the tile's in the same place. Here, okay? These tiles, even though they're a Subway size, a 3" by 6" roughly. Actually, let's take, I know they're about 6 inches, yeah. So basic same size as a standard Subway tile, but obviously a lot more colorful. Cut out of natural stone. This is a natural stone tile. And a lot of people, at least where I'm around, call these like travertines. And they have a lot of, very interesting, because each one's quite a bit different. So I really like seeing all the different shades and styles and colors that these things come in. And that a lot of them are pretty holy too. Here's a good example of that. You can see there's actually like small craters in there. Sometimes you get some pieces of crystal in there and they get really sparkly. So they're pretty cool looking. All right, so that was the tile. So let's start with the next thing that we're working with is the spacers, okay? So the main spacers you see on the wall, these little green spacers here from a company called Tavi, okay? And I think these are like a, they're less than 1/8 inch. I think these are around a 3/32, I think what these are. And these are included in the Amazon links down below. So there's different thicknesses of them. I'll put down there. And along the base there, I don't know if you remember seeing that there, but there was all these little blue wedges. And these are great for starting up against, on the bottom row there against the countertop, okay? And they're a little wedge. Pretty awesome. And there's different thicknesses of these as well. Okay, so here is the mastic that I'm using. It's from a company called Mape, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Type 1, pretty standard tile mastic, okay? I just get this tub at Lowe's for like $16, $15, $16. And normally a tub this size will do an average kitchen backsplash from start to finish. It'll be empty, but it generally does an average kitchen backsplash. And here I've got a 4" putty knife, okay? And then I have my trowel, okay? So you can see all the little teeth spacers in there. Now this one here looks like a putty knife, okay, with a square edge on one side. Looks just like a putty knife, which I love because working with walls, backsplashes, I hate using regular trowels because they're really designed for floors. So I'd always be using, my drywall knives on there and then try to use a trowel to finish it up. Now I still like to apply with the drywall knife. I don't know if it's just because of the smooth blade. I think it just goes on a little bit better. You can apply with this, but then working it afterwards, this just is so much better. But not only that, the space, all these trowels have different sizes, okay? And a very typical one, you got a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch, meaning it's a 1/4 inch wide, a 1/4 inch deep. And then actually generally smaller than that, most stores would then just go to the little triangle ones, and they're like an 1/8 or something like that. These are 3/16, okay? So they're smaller than a 1/4. I found they're like that perfect Goldilocks size that I couldn't get, okay? Because the ones with the little triangles, I would actually use a grinder and open them up a little bit more because I wasn't putting enough glue on. But the 1/4 inch was putting too much glue on the wall, and it would cause the tiles to not want to sit flat, especially the smaller one. This one comes from a company called backsplashtrowel.com, okay? And no, they don't sell directly from their website, and they used to sell on Amazon. That's where I got this one from. But I contacted them this morning because I looked on Amazon and I didn't see it there. I said, hey, are you guys just on a shortage right now, or are you still selling on Amazon? And they said they're actually trying to finish up a bigger retail deal. So I'm not sure where or what. Obviously, they don't want to give me any details. That's personal to the company, whether it goes through or not. But they said they wanted to send me some of these. Okay, so as soon as I figure out where they're being sold at, I'll have a link for these. And then if I do get a batch of these, I'm gonna give them away to my viewers, you guys, okay? So just follow the directions in the description down below. I'll let you know if I still have some available and what you need to do to get your hands on a free one that I'll mail out to you. Continental US only, please. But I'm gonna send out, if I get a batch of them, I'm gonna send them out to you guys. Of course, you're gonna need a tape measure and a pencil. If these were smooth tiles, like your glossy white subway tiles, you actually want a Sharpie. And don't worry, the Sharpie washes right off of that super high gloss. You'll never see the pencil mark. I'm talking regular Sharpie. Yes, the regular permanent Sharpie, it washes right off when it gets wet. So don't worry. A speed square is great to have for helping to cut out around outlets and stuff like that to mark it. And then of course you're going to want a tile saw. I prefer, especially with cutting the outlets and all this other kind of stuff, I really prefer the wet saws, and I have a pretty big one there. You've probably seen my other videos. And I do actually have a video, it's an older, I had a full video series on floors, and then it was like a 5-part series. I kind of cleaned it up, fixed it all together in one video so I can put the chapters in it, and then redid it. So I'll have a link pop up top right of your screen for that, so you guys can see that. Now, if you guys are doing mosaics on the sheets, I have, if you get a good one, they're going to be very beautiful. They are harder and more tedious to put up, but there are some complications with them and some very cheap ones being made right now, which are really problematic. And I have a video talking about that, top right of your screen for that one, okay? Okay, now let's talk about preparing to do the tile. Now, I added, this did not have a tile backsplash already. Now, if you do have a tile backsplash already and you want to like, how the heck do I get that out of here? I'll have a video top right of your screen, how to cut it out. And then, now I didn't have to do that, but I still had to open up the wall because I did add under cabinet lights to this kitchen, which are amazing. You see how beautiful this looks? Let's turn off, and that's what you get without the lights, okay? And I even have every light on here, including my, my halo light shining this way, okay? So it's actually darker if I turn that off. But I mean, that's a huge difference on what you get to see with under cabinet lights. If you want a video on how to install the under cabinet lights, top right of your screen for that. Okay, so the next thing on the prep, so if you have to take out your old tile or you want to put in the lights, and we've passed that, is you need to put the drywall back in place if you either had to tear out the old tile or you put lights in. So I'm kind of showing you what that looks like. This is an area where I cut out, I spliced in new drywall here, screwed it in place, and then I use a joint compound to fill in between the old and the new. So you don't want your tiles like, you know, sitting on level, and you don't want to fill in, the mastic you do not want to fill in with like, well, I'll just float it out with the glue. No, it won't end up drying right. I mean, it kind of will after a couple of days, but a lot of times the bond will be damaged in between that, especially if you try to grout it. You can fill in, if you wanted to use thinset mortar, now that's something you can use to fill in a little bit, low spots and stuff like that, and build up, and it will dry just fine. But the glue, not so much, okay? Now here, some people might wonder, is that just the drywall compound like right that you're gonna stick to it? Yes, but that's because I used the quick setting, the setting joint compound. Okay, there's a picture of what it looks like. That actually has Portland in it. People like Portland. Yeah, the same stuff you put in concrete to make it harden. That's what makes this set up so fast when you put in water. This sets up in 20 minutes, okay? I can't work with it anymore after 20 minutes. And after about 45 minutes on this particular one, you can get different setting times on them. On this one here is a 20-minute one. So after about 45 minutes, I can recoat over top of it if I need to put a second coat. And in probably about 3 to 4 hours, I can sand, okay? Because the Portland's in there, it makes it a little bit harder, but definitely less dusty, okay? So the glue or the thinset mortar doesn't have a problem sticking to this because of what's in it. If you use regular joint compound, I recommend using a primer first, just whether it's a Kills or just a standard like drywall primer. Just one or the other. Prime it first before you put the tile up so you get better adhesion. I've also taken all the outlets and you gotta unscrew them because the tile's going behind the outlets, behind these tabs, okay? You don't want the tile going on top of that. So you gotta unscrew them so you can put the tile behind it. And I turned off the breakers and then wrapped the outlets with electrical tape, okay? That way I don't accidentally bump them and shock myself while I'm installing the tile, or especially when I'm grouting with that, I got that sponge and I'm wiping it down. Woo, I've done that before in an accident. That does not feel good when you have a wet sponge and it touches the outlet, okay? So another thing you got to think about is the ends. How are you going to finish the tile on the end? Because you don't want the cut tile and that open grout line, you know, over here where the cabinet is just open wall, because we're going to stop with the cabinet and then there's another foot of wall past it. So Some tile have what they call a bullnose tile to go with it. Generally your glazed tiles do. It's just a tile that has one edge that's rounded all the way over and completely finished, okay? That's a great tile to use. Just use that as a finishing edge. A lot of tiles don't have that, including the natural stone, so we're using them in the metal. Some people call them Schluters, but I think it's actually a brand name. We use this L channel metal, so the tile sits, the tile will sit right there on the metal, so that all you see is this finished edge right there. So it's really clean and nice. So get this cut. If you're gonna use the metal, get it cut ahead of time before you start setting tile. So this is one of the things I do when I prep. So I have those cut, make sure that they fit where they're supposed to go, so when I get to it, I don't have to fumble with it. It's ready to go. And I think the last thing that I need to talk about for prep work is your stove board. See, it says stove board right there. It's just, you're just gonna set a board across, after you pull your stove out. Oh wait, I guess there is one more thing. But anyways, after you pull your stove out, set a board here, 30 inches long typically, because this opening should be typically 30 inches wide. Put a straight edge on top of your countertop. So you can take your board and slide it right up to it, so you can make sure that's perfectly level with the countertop, and screw it into your studs, okay? That way you can tile right across with no break. When it's done and dry, pull the board out, grout it, the stove parks right back in, looks great. And then the other thing is right above it. Do you have a vent fan or microwave? Either way, it should come out, okay, so that you can tile underneath it. That way, first of all, it looks better. Second of all, if you ever change it out, you don't want it to be trapped because of the tile. And two, the new one may not be the exact same size. So I don't tile all the way to the top, but I basically stop the last full row of tile, even if there's a microwave here, because sometimes my customers change their mind and decide they want a vent fan up here in the future because they like seeing the bigger backsplash. So they might move the microwave into a cabinet or onto a table or just get rid of it, and they just want a vent fan up here so they can see more of this. So I always tile up just to the last full row. I don't worry about making that cut tight up there because there's going to be something there. Okay, how do you start your tile? Well, I basically just take a full tile. A lot of times I like to do left to right. You can go right to left, but I start in the corner here and drop a full tile. Put my wedge spacers underneath it, lift it up, and just start tiling across. I'll actually apply the glue right to the tiles right when I start generally, because typically you've got like a light switch or something very close off when you're doing a backsplash here. Now if this area was completely open, you could just take the glue itself and the mastic and just apply it right to the wall, okay, with the trowel, and then go stick. Before I start sticking them or applying lots of glue, I like to cut my little starter pieces here as well. Since this is a half offset, I just cut the tile in half, so there's a half there and a half there. If it was a third offset, instead of looking like this as a half offset, a third offset is like that, and then this would be here. And then the next row would be there. So it's a third, and those are two very popular, those are the two most popular patterns for a kitchen backsplash, is a half offset or a third offset. Some people like to say, well, what about like a quarter offset and stuff like that? Well, most tiles, unless you got like really long tiles, a 3x6 tile, you're getting kind of crazy if you're trying to break it up that much. Now, if you had bigger tiles on here, and if you had like 10 inches long, and you want to do a quarter offset, okay, cool. But on a 3x6, that's just you're getting kind of crazy. Now, some of you might want to ask me, well, why didn't you get your level out? Did you put the level out on this? No, I don't touch a level on a job like this. Level never makes it out of my bag. And if someone came up here with a level, I'd smack their hand. I'll tell you why. It's very simple. Your countertops should be basically level already. They should be darn close. And if they're off by a little bit, I don't care. Because what your eyes are going to see is this countertop line. So are you really going to try to adjust the wall tile to make the wall tile perfectly level by lifting it so that the line against the countertop actually changes? No, that's gonna look terrible. That's what your eye is gonna see. If you actually start changing this line here, whether you start shaving tiles or open up the grout line to make it taller, to try to make the tiles perfectly level and leaving the countertop behind, that's just gonna look terrible. So just forget about it. Just follow the countertop. Okay, so let's talk about actually putting tiles on the wall now. So I've spread some glue out over here because we have a big open area. In the tight areas, like I was saying before when I start, If it's really close to a light switch, a lot of times it is, I'll apply it right to the tile, but because I know I've got a lot of cutting to do. I don't want to put on a lot of glue on the wall because it'll start to set up like this, because I've been talking the whole time. Watch. I touch it, it's not sticking to my fingers. This is set up, I gotta scrape this off. So that's why I'll apply it to the tile. Now that's slower, of course, but it's faster in the long run when you have a lot of cuts, because then you don't have to scrape it off and clean it off. So let's just clean this off really quick. Okay, and that's not set up bad, it's just the surface. So I'll actually reuse this glue. I'll just kind of mix it up back in the tub a little bit. All right, so if you want to spread some on the wall, if you have an open area where you know you can set some tiles without having to stop. Okay, let's just spread it on the wall. Okay, try not to put it on so thick that it starts falling off and hitting the floor. And then we need to come back with our trowel and work it around. Okay. And you want to make sure that you press down hard enough so that you're scraping the wall, because you want the glue to be the same thickness all the way around. You don't want to have fat spots, okay? And you want to try to more on the mastic glue than the thinset, but the thinset too, is you want to try to keep the lines the same direction so that air can actually flow it down in there and help it to really dry good before you come back the next day to grout, okay, or when you do come back to grout. All right, now I already pre-cut one for right here against the cabinet, because that's not a full tile. So I'll double check it before I stick it in. I'm gonna apply it directly to the tile. So I'll just put like a wall up there. Kind of spread it across. I don't know how well you can see the lines. And then we're gonna set it in. Okay. Put a couple spacers in. Now a lot of times I don't do the vertical spacers because these lines are pretty small. I can just eyeball it. But I've done a lot of these before. So if you're new to this, take the time and put the spacers in here. And don't worry, after that starts to set up, these tiles, the ones on the vertical ones will start falling out. Don't worry about it. That you already got the gap right when you set it in there. So if it starts to set up and they start falling out, seriously, don't worry about trying to shove them back in. The tile's not moving left to right, okay? Now some people might ask, like, do you try to like vary the pattern on these tiles? Okay, a little bit. I mean, sometimes you get a batch that has a lot of white ones in there, so I try not to put a bunch of white ones, so you got like this square of white ones, then the colors all the way around. But then like some customers may get a little more particular on it. Like my customer said, she's just really worried that this tile is going to blend too much with the countertop, which I really don't think. It looks amazing with the countertop. So she was trying to tell me not to put the dark ones, too many dark ones against the countertop. But I'm like, I'm definitely not going to put like a row of white straight across, but I really don't know what that means exactly. Like is this one too dark, or is this one? I don't know. I'm just kind of grabbing here and there. Now, when I got really fancy ones, what I really look for, so the two things I really look for in these tiles is I don't want like a big square of white. If you got ones that are like really white with almost no color in them, I don't put that all together in one wallop. But then if you got ones that got like a really cool thing going on here, with a lot of crystal, the big holes, I try to make sure they're very visible in a place where you're going to see them. I don't try to hide them behind, behind the stove or way up where you can't see. I try to make sure that they're more visible than the others. Other than that, I just kind of grab and go, to be completely honest. All right, now when I'm in a section like this, where obviously I can't start like a full tile right here, like I did where I started, and I got to make sure that this sits in right, I'll actually measure to find my center point here. Just make a small mark. It's just something I can see where it's at. So I can put that center mark over the grout line. And that works for the half offset. If you're doing the third offset, then you need to be like measuring like a third over, you know what I'm saying? But put that mark, and that'll generally keep your rows very straight if you do stuff like that. Now, if you want to use lasers, you can of course do that too. You know, put a laser line on there. But that's a very simple way that's always worked good. Okay, here's another tip. Well, first of all, I should go back. When it comes to travertine tiles, these natural stone, a lot of times they come in really dusty right out of the packs. I'm like just really dusty. I like to wipe them off, you know, rinse them off some water, wipe them off to get that off so that they adhere better. And then, especially with the mastic glue, the mastic glue does not like sticking to things that are wet. Okay, so make sure after you cut them, you pat them dry before you stick them on the wall, because you might stick it and then turn around and it will fall right off. Also, if your mastic falls a little short here, you know, stick some on the tile to fill in so that it has glue all the way across. All right, another thing, when you set the tile towards against the wood cabinet, whether it's up underneath or to the side, do leave a proper grout line there. Don't put the tile tight against the wood. Okay, if you get really tight against the wood, you're like, oh, I don't want to go back and recut that. Go back and recut it, okay? Because the wood, even though there's not a lot of humidity change inside the house, there still is a little bit. And I've seen it cause tile to buckle because a little bit of expansion happens and something has to give. So you much rather be that grout line give than your tile. All right, when you're coming to an end, whether you're need to quit for the day, take a break, or you're gonna go hit another section, if you have the glue or thin set left over, scrape that clean so it doesn't start setting up. Now right now, let's take a look. If we touch it, it's actually starting to set up already. It's not really sticking my finger. You should be able to, if it's tacky enough to still set, you should be able to touch it and there should be a little dollop stuck to your finger. Okay, if not, it means that surface is starting to set up and you don't want to stick tile to that. So we need to get rid of this anyways, but let's just clean this up and I'm gonna show you guys how to do outlets. Okay, outlet holes can be a little bit tricky, but not always too hard. A lot of your cuts are going to be just an L cutout. Alright, so what you want to do is when you get your tile lined up to your outlet box, wherever it lines up on the wall, then you want to mark it on here, and you want to mark it with the box. If your drywall hole goes a little bit bigger than the box, forget about it. You want to measure it with the outside edge of the box so that you can just see the frame of it, okay? So, you know, like this one right here, cut out like that. So it was like a mark like this and a mark like that. And that's a pretty easy cut on a wet saw. You know, you're just coming in one side, come down side, that pops off, and you're done. Now I want to come in here a bit closer because I added something to this cut. See this, maybe you can see this notch right here. Maybe this one's a little easier to see over here, that notch right there. And you might be like, what is that notch for? Okay, don't need it for like a normal switch. Normal switch, this is for the cover plate screws, okay? And a normal switch, here's a screw for the cover plate, there's a screw for the cover plate, it's nowhere close to the tile. A regular outlet, the screw's right in the middle. Okay, we know that, okay? But these decorator plates, okay, if you have any of the cover plates like this, whether it's a big toggle, you know, switch, or the GFI outlets that are square, the screws for the cover plate are actually right up here, and they will, if you had this on drywall, you probably wouldn't have noticed because they can actually push right through the drywall. It's not a problem. The tile, and they're not going to push through. You're going to screw it, and it's going to take that cover plate and the outlet stuff, they're going to try to force it forward. Okay, so those notches are right centered. See where the screw hole is here in your electrical box? That lines up, you know, with the screw hole for, you know, for the cover plate. So you just make a little, you know, little half circle there. It's not really that big. This is a little square. It's okay if you make it more square, but cut those notches out so that those screws will fit in. Trust me, it's going to make a huge difference when you're done. You can grind them out later, but that sucks. It sucks. Okay, now a harder cut is like this one up here. There, I move the switch so you can see it. You see this is one tile here, so I had to cut here, here, and here. Now, you know, you just got to know how your saw works. Being a double box, I was able to plunge with the saw. I have an 8-inch blade on there, or is it a 7-inch? Whatever. And I was able to plunge So I come up here, I cut up here, and I plunge down, go across here, not going too far, and then flipped it over. I was able to punch through just enough where I could see where the blade was in the middle, and I plunged from the back side, and it fell out, okay? If you have to make this cut, say it's a single box, obviously plunging doesn't work this way. So what you do is you just keep cutting up, cut up, cut up, cut up, cut up, cut up, cut up, and then you break all the little tabs off of the tile, and then you can use the saw to clean up the finished edge right there. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about for setting tile is when you hit a corner here, okay? So when you hit a corner, I know some people will just be like, oh, I hit the end here, I'll cut those tiles off, and the new wall, I'll start a brand new row. Now, that doesn't look very good. I like to call it a bookend. Like basically, you know, here it is, and it opens up, and then there's your corner. I don't know if that's a proper term to call it, but so when my tile hits that end right there, I cut it off, and then that cut off piece goes there, as if it was one tile that just kept going, okay? I will tell you though, when you hit the new wall, as you do your different rows, that is an area right there that can definitely throw off your pattern when you come over here. So if you, especially if your walls are out of square or a little bit here and there, or if they bow, you'll notice that when you come over here. So when you start doing your new rows, make sure to mark on them and make sure that they're fit in right on that pattern and not just continuing across. So that being said, is say I cut here, I start my first row coming off here, and I start my next row, and after I cut it off, if I mark that tile and put it over here and it's not lining up right, I recut it. Whether I have to take a little bit more off to make it line up right, or if I take a whole new tile and cut it so that it properly fits that length, so that when the pattern comes on this wall, it is that proper half offset or third offset pattern, because you can definitely lose it when you hit a corner and keep going. So just make sure that happens, and it will look beautiful, like the tiles just wrap across. And of course, cutting new tiles on natural stone when they're so different can be a little more tricky to make it look right, that it was the same tile, but you can generally find a tile that looks pretty close if you have to recut it and put two different tiles together to make that fold right around the corner. Okay, here we go. Got all the tile up, getting it ready to seal it. Let me show you the tile real quick. And if I do say so myself, it looks pretty darn good. Now some of you might be saying, wait, why are you sealing it? The grout's not in yet. Well, we're not sealing the grout. Some will be like, that blew your mind, right? The grout already has sealer in there. And hopefully you got a high-end grout, a high-performance grout that already has sealers built in, because it'll have like a BioGuard, protects against like mold, mildew, sealers for stains. Sometimes it even has different fibers or other polymers in there to help keep it from cracking. So don't buy the base level grout, okay, and then try to seal it later. That's just a pain in the butt. The reason we're sealing it is this natural stone, and it will absolutely absorb stuff. So if you spill something like grape juice, sure, that's what we're gonna call it, you know, moms, your grape juice. If we spill your grape juice on there, it's definitely gonna leave a stain. And then there, it's like, oh, that just got ruined. You can pretty much go to any place that sells tile, and they'll have, you know, stone sealer. That's just a very simple thing. Okay, but there's two things to think about when you get it. If you want the enhancer or not, okay? And the enhancer just makes the tile, well, enhances it. It brings some of the natural colors and other lighter features that are in there and helps kind of make them pop a little more. And the way to really know what it's going to look like before you actually do it is if you take a tile, and certain tiles are going to pop a lot more than others, but if you wet it, when the tile is wet, that's basically how it's going to look like with the enhancer on there. So we'll actually just try to wet half this tile. Okay. Oh, that's a good example. Okay. So, and it's not going to be glossy. So the enhancer does not make it glossy. It's not like paint or something like that. But this is what this tile would look like with the enhancer. And this is obviously what it looks like without. And so this was a really good example. Other tiles don't pop nearly as much because the different stones and crystals and stuff in there. And of course, the enhancers only work with natural stone. It doesn't work with glazed tiles at all, okay? And we're going to be applying it with just a little pump spray bottle. So do read the instructions on your sealer that you're using because they're going to vary all a little bit. But basically, most of them are going to want you to either apply with a paintbrush or a roller or both, or like a pump sprayer. They don't really want you rubbing it on. I don't know if it's things because the fibers will get stuck in the stone or cause other issues, because I like rubbing on stain, but most of these sealers will tell you don't use a rag to rub on. So you want to apply it with a roller, brush, or sprayer. But then, okay, most of them will also say wait about 10 minutes for it to soak in, and then wipe off any excess. And you absolutely do, because if you have excess, especially if you kind of drip, if you have a drip happening, dab that right away with a dry cloth. I got some just some white jersey rags over here, like they're like cut up white t-shirts. So if you have any drips happening, just dab those right away. And then after like the 10 minutes, come back and blot it out. Make sure that you have any excess, because it will cause a haze on there. And then it's going to look worse than if you hadn't sealed it in the first place. Okay, and you can do a second coat, which we'll probably do on this one here because they're very porous. This particular one here says wait an hour for the second coat. And then you're supposed to wait like between 24 to 72 hours to be completely set up and dry, ready for, you know, regular everyday use after that. So let's just get some on the wall. Okay, you see here I've got a cardboard box broken down using as a shield because these countertops were put in a month ago. They were already sealed at the time, so I don't need to seal them again, and definitely don't need the enhancer on them. So got that here blocking any of the overspray. Super easy, quick thing to do. Okay, it would work better if the sprayer wasn't broken. All right, now when you look at that, I mean, I think we added some really nice color. And there was a second reason why we did the sealer before the grout. First of all, one, the grout doesn't really need to be sealing, but it wouldn't hurt the grout if we added this sealer on top of it. But this travertine tile, if you haven't noticed, has lots of holes and grooves and stuff like that. And it's going to get filled a little bit with that grout, all these little things. And by sealing them ahead of time, it will, when it comes to cleaning that grout out, more of the grout will clean out of those little divots and holes and stuff like that with the sealer on first, because it won't be able to stick as good. So we will be able to see more of those when we're done, and that's why. Somebody asked how much more. I really haven't done this enough times one way or the other to really give you a good answer on that, but it's more, okay. And now we're simply just gonna, you know, you could probably do a little bit of rub. You can really just dab it just to make sure that there's no excess on there. You definitely don't want any excess. Yeah, wiping's better. Okay, here we are back in the kitchen after the weekend. Last I left you, we just sealed all the tile, 2 coats on there, and left it to dry for the whole weekend, which was nice. Because the sealer wanted like 24 hours minimum to 72 to be really set up good. So we definitely have that now. So we're getting ready to grout. Now let me show you the grout that I'm going to be using, okay? Called Power Grout from a company called Tech. It's one of the best grouts out there that I've ever used on the performance end. Some of the stuff I got on Home Depot and Lowe's before, they're higher performance grouts. They just don't mix up really well. I mean, they work all right, but I just really like this one here. And the color we're going with is birch, which is almost the same color as the bag here, so it's really kind of hard to see. So not a dark color. When it comes to tile, so lots of people ask me, what color grout should I get? I'm not a colorist, but kind of simple rule of thumb, if you have a plain glazed tile, I go with a contrasting grout, something that's gonna really pop. Show off those grout lines and stuff like that. Show off the pattern so you can see it. White tiles, white grout, very boring, and you lose it. Everything just was washed out. Now for natural stone tile, or tile that's mimicking natural stone that has a lot of color in it, I generally suggest a grout that blends, okay? Because you got all the color happening here and all the contrast in the tile itself. You know, don't try to like fight that. Just get something that blends in, and that's why we would go with that. Okay, so what tools are we gonna need for putting the grout in? All right, now like I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, since we're working on a backsplash, which is on the wall, I like wall board tools, okay? So yes, this is a standard drywall pan, okay? And I always recommend people to get the stainless steel one, not the plastic one with the 2 little metal blades in there. This just works so much better for a few bucks more. A 6-inch putty knife. I like the ones with the rounded edges. Now you don't have to have so many of these little ones. This is just kind of like my slew with stuff. This is that 4-inch knife I use to apply the glue with. Here's a 3-inch, a 2, and a 1.5. You definitely don't have to have that much, but you're probably going to need a smaller knife because there's probably going to be a place up like beside one of these under cabinet lights or next to an outlet against the wall where you're going to need something smaller to get in there. That 6 is going to be too big. Okay, so at least have one, small knife available for the tight spots. Then we're going to need a grout trowel, okay? So after we apply the grout, this is what's the first step to cleaning the excess grout off of the tile, okay? So they're generally kind of like a foam core in here with kind of a rubber base, but there it is. You can get it at any tile place. Plus, I'll try to have Amazon links for everything here. Then we're going to need a bucket of water, okay, with a tile sponge, okay? And yes, a tile sponge, not a car washing sponge. Car washing sponge will not work. Real quick, why? The car washing sponge is too soft and most of the time has square edges. We need a sponge that's stiffer and has rounded edges. That's why we're using a tile grout sponge. Okay, and actually I need to refill my rinse bucket because it had some leaves and stuff in it. It's fall time, some other stuff, so I want that cleaner. And I'm filling it with the warm water from the kitchen sink. Now don't rinse it in the kitchen sink. But another thing you should do when you're grouting your tile is wait for the coldest day of the year to do it on, okay? Now it's not the very coldest it's gonna be all year, but so far this is the coldest day of the year. Yesterday was 70 degrees. Today, right now, it's not even 40 still. A little cold out there and the wind is nipping. Woo! So we're gonna fill it up with the warm water from the sink, but we will take it outside to rinse it. You don't want the excess grout going down your drain. No, take it outside, rinse it, but you can fill it back up here. Okay, so how do we mix up the grout? All right, so on the back, it'll probably, of course, say how much water to add for the whole bag. Let's not do the whole bag. Okay, now this is a probably 10-pound bag. I was double checking because sometimes they're off by a little bit depending on the brand. Maybe it's a 8-pound bag, but 10-pound bag generally does an average kitchen backsplash all right, okay? But we don't want to mix it up all at once because I can't set it that fast. Well, first of all, we don't want to waste. If we have some left over, that's nice in case we ever need to do touch up. So you don't want to mix up all of it anyways. You want to save a little bit if you can. But also, especially a lot of your performance grouts will actually set up faster than normal grout. And the Tech Power Grout is definitely one of those. So when we are applying it, we're not going to try to apply, I'm not going to apply this whole wall and come back and rinse it. I'm going to apply like this section right here underneath this double cabinet, and then I'm going to rinse it. And then I'll apply this area here under the microwave stove area and rinse it, okay? It will actually, if I were to go like to here, just past the stove area and come back, I'd actually be having to scrub the tile to get the grout out of the edges just in that time period. So I'm gonna mix it up by hand, okay? in my pan, so I'll show you guys how I do it. I'll put some grout in here and I'm gonna mix it up, okay? So two things about that. One, I can't speak for every performance grout. Regular grout, just regular plain grout, which I don't suggest you guys using. We talked about that because that has no sealers built into it and all the other stuff. But on the power grout, if you were to use a beater and aggressively mix it up, it sets up even faster yet. Okay, so mixing it up by hand, even though it's not as fun as sticking a beater on a drill, it's better. It's gonna be better for you to try to apply this. You know, because you're not professional tile setters, you don't have like two people here working. If I had a person here with me and we could just like slap it on like crazy and he could be rinsing right behind me, then whatever, but I'm one dude. And number two, how we're gonna mix this up. Now I don't remember if the power grout had so much of a problem. There was another performance brand where we actually mixed the color in separately, I believe, or maybe it was the power grout, but it had a mineral problem that affected the very dark grouts. Now this one here isn't a dark grout, but because it was a mineral problem, what it caused was actually like a white fuzzy haze, kind of like a crystallization on the surface of the grout when it dried. And it was a pain in the butt to try to get rid of that. And being on a dark grout, it really showed up, okay? But it really seemed to only be a problem with the dark grouts. But this customer here is on a well and does have a heavy mineral issue. So instead of using the water from the faucet or the hose, I got myself a couple of gallons of distilled water. That way there's no mineral issue that's gonna affect the color of the grout, and the grout color should be perfect. All right, I'm gonna try to mix this up on camera. I don't know if I can keep it steady enough, but okay, I need to sharpen my knife, I know. All right, so we're just gonna mix up maybe probably a third of this bag right off the bat. Okay, so you can see how full my pan is. You gotta leave some room there to mix it up or you're just gonna make a mess, okay? And that'll keep us busy for a good while anyways. Now with grout, please remember that it does not require as much water as mortar does. Not nearly as much. Adding water to grout is much more sensitive and you can easily turn this into soup if you're not careful. Okay, now what you're looking for is a grout that's easily pliable, but not soupy, because especially being on the walls, you don't want it to sag and come out of the grout lines. So we'll start with that and make a small adjustments as we go if we need to. Okay, so like I said a minute ago, we're just gonna focus on this area right here first before we go any further. And if you skip the step of wrapping the outlets and switches with electrical tape, or you just want to be extra careful, this is the time. Shut off your breaker before we move any further. Okay, so we're just gonna take the grout, take a little wallop of it, and shove it in there. And here's the thing, you wanna press kind of hard. And I think you can see it pretty well. So when you press hard, do you see how in the grout line, how it's actually bulged out? That means I pushed it hard enough, it went all the way to the back wall and then pushed itself back out as I spread it through. So it was actually forcing the excess out of the hole, okay? So seeing that bulge is a good thing because the grout needs to get all the way back there. Shallow grout, because the grout shouldn't be on the surface here, it's just gonna be in between the tiles. And if it's shallow, it's gonna chip out easily over time. So in the first year, you're gonna see a lot of problems if you don't get this pressed in the way it should be. All right, now we got a ton of grout everywhere. So let's first use the knife that we were already using here and clean off a bit of the excess. When you come up here to the bottom line here, don't dig it out. Try to carefully kind of flatten it out. When you're doing that, if you find a spot here that got pulled out, then obviously fill it back in. This is definitely the messiest part of the job. All right, now we've got our grout trowel here, and I wet it. Okay, so I just dropped it in the bucket of water there, rinse water. Got it wet here to get started with. And we're going to scrape as much of this excess as we can. Two good reasons. One, if you don't clean up all the grout, especially on natural stone like this where it fills in a lot of holes, you're probably gonna run out before you hit the end. So like, recover as much as you can. And then the second part is it just makes the sponge part even harder. So get this as clean as possible. And you want this bottom line here against the countertop to be very tight. Some people want to caulk it right away with the matching grout caulk, but that doesn't not last nearly as long as regular grout does, especially against mold and mildew and stuff like that. So if you keep this grout line really tight and almost tucked under, you don't want it to curve out at all. It'll let this grout line look the best it can. Yes, grout can crack. If there's movement between the top here and the wall, the grout's going to crack out. So get the caulking, and after it's, you know, down the road, if it's cracked, put some of that caulking on top. But I always like to do the grout first. I think it's better. Okay, now hopefully you didn't go like really far out. We have to scrub this hard, because you shouldn't have to scrub this too hard. It should be pretty easy movements here. If you scrub them really hard, you're probably taking too much grout out. All right, of course, little corners like that are hard. And this is gonna take multiple wipes here. All right, then when I get most of the excess grout off, there's still a lot of haze going on here. Okay, and residue. Actually, it's more than haze. I like to take another, make sure the sponge is clean again, and then just do like a straight over wipe, like that. And then flip sides, and a straight wipe. And then rinse it. Okay, one more straight wipe. See, that's really nice looking right there. Now, as this dries, it will get a haze on it. A very, very thin film. You can't do anything about it, because every time you wipe, you're wiping across the grout. So it will, you're just spreading it. So what you do is from here is you let it dry all the way. So tomorrow, we can come back with a wet sponge and then just wipe the haze off. But this is grouting. You just did it. Take a look how great that looks. This is gonna be an awesome kitchen. Okay, looks like it's time to wrap up the video with you guys here. Well, I think I've given you just about every tip and trick I can think of, and every like just tidbit information, probably too much, but again, that's why the chapters are here, so you can bounce around, skip ahead, go back and review easily as possible, okay? Just continue that all the way to the end, and then, you know, screw the outlets back in. Since they are on tile, you'll probably need longer screws. So you can go to the store and get 6 32, so that's number 6 by 32, that's how many threads. by like 1.5 inches. I keep a box of that in my truck. So put the longer screws back through, okay, and outlets will look great. The microwave, if you have one, maybe you just have a vent hood, so it just screws back up top here. If you have a microwave, maybe I'll make a video on that, but you gotta make the holes here. The screws came out of bigger because it's being pushed forward. And then when you put the bracket on, you're gonna wanna use, you can't just drill through that. You don't wanna use a hammer drill because you wanna crack the tiles. But if you use a diamond grit hole saw, they make tiny little diamond grit hole saws, like 1/4 inch. You can get like at Lowe's or Home Depot. And again, of course, I'll try to find links down for the description. And use those to punch the holes for your screws going in, you know, all that kind of stuff. Other than that, thanks so much for hanging out with me with this video. Please take a moment and subscribe to our channel. Check out our website. Hundreds of more videos organized really, really well. And there's another video for you guys to enjoy. You guys have a great one.